What would you do if the very people meant to keep your neighborhood peaceful tried to destroy your family's life, only to be blindsided by a secret so shocking it silenced even the cops? Stay till the end of this unbelievable story, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping tales that prove truth is always stranger than fiction. The day we moved into our dream home in a gated community, my wife and I thought we were stepping into a peaceful suburban paradise, but little did we know, trouble had been waiting right behind the perfectly trimmed hedges, ready to pounce in the form of the HOA president herself, Karen, a woman whose entire personality seemed to revolve around wielding a clipboard like a sword and enforcing rules as if she were running a military camp instead of a neighborhood. The first week we painted our mailbox black instead of community standard bronze. She slapped a $250 fine on our doorstep with a smirk, and when my wife politely told her we'd already submitted an approval form and were waiting for confirmation, Karen sneered and said, "Rules are rules, sweetheart, and ignorance is no excuse." My wife, who had spent years dealing with hostile clients as a corporate lawyer, didn't flinch and decided to ignore the absurd fine while documenting everything, but Karen wasn't used to anyone pushing back, and that's when she escalated. Letters in red ink demanding payment, threats of property liens, and even passive-aggressive notes taped to our garage about keeping up appearances. Then one Saturday afternoon, when my wife and I were planting rose bushes in the front yard, Karen stormed up, phone in hand, filming us as if we were criminals vandalizing the property. She shouted that she was calling the police for willful violation of law, while neighbors peeked out from blinds, and though I laughed at the absurdity, my wife just shook her head, muttering, "She's digging her own grave." 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up, and out stepped Officer Daniels, tall, broad-shouldered, clearly ready to de-escalate what he assumed was a silly neighbor spat. But the moment Karen, with all the self-righteousness in the world, shoved the citation papers into his hand and declared, "Arrest them if they don't pay up," the officer froze, eyes darting between my wife and the paperwork, before stammering, "Judge, it's you." And I swear the entire neighborhood gasped. Yes, my wife wasn't just a lawyer, she had recently been appointed as a county judge, a fact we hadn't broadcast because we wanted a quiet life, but Officer Daniels knew her from court, and the look of utter panic on Karen's face when she realized she had just called the cops on a judge was priceless. But instead of gloating, my wife calmly stood, brushed the dirt from her gloves, and said, "Officer, please note this harassment. This has nothing to do with law enforcement, and she's wasting police resources." Daniels nodded firmly, warned Karen that false emergency calls could result in charges, and left with an apologetic smile to us, but the drama didn't stop there. Karen doubled down, furious that her authority had been undermined. The next week, she convinced the HOA board to issue us a formal lien notice, but my wife, being who she was, filed an injunction in court, exposing not only Karen's harassment but also the HOA's misuse of funds. Turns out, Karen had been funneling HOA dues into personal beautification projects that somehow always ended up improving her own property value. The hearing was brutal. Neighbors testified about her intimidation tactics, photos showed her hosting HOA luncheons on the community dime, and when the judge, not my wife, obviously, but one of her colleagues, ruled against the HOA, ordering Karen removed as president and fined personally for fraud, the room erupted in shocked whispers. But the story twisted again. Rather than accept defeat, Karen tried to play the victim, claiming she had only ever wanted to protect community standards, and she staged a protest on the cul-de-sac, waving a sign about corrupt judges and unfair treatment. Neighbors who once feared her now openly mocked her, one even mowing his lawn at dawn in defiance of her old noise rules. And Karen, cornered, finally snapped. She trespassed onto our property in the middle of the night, spray painting rule breakers across our driveway, not realizing our security cameras caught every second. When police arrived this time, there was no hesitation. She was arrested on the spot for vandalism and harassment, and as she was led away screaming about conspiracies, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and disbelief that it had escalated this far. But the ultimate twist came months later when we learned Karen had tried to sue the HOA from jail, claiming wrongful removal, only for her own family to turn against her and sell her house to cover her legal fees, effectively ending her reign of terror. Life in the community transformed after that. Neighbors who once tiptoed around now held block parties, Kids played freely in yards without fear of fines, and every time I looked at the rose bushes my wife and I planted, I remembered the day Karen's power crumbled with one simple revelation: she had messed with the wrong family. And as for my wife, the so-called rule-breaker, she became something of a legend in the neighborhood, not just because she stood up to Karen, but because she reminded everyone that no matter how loud or powerful someone pretends to be, truth, justice, and resilience will always speak louder in the end.